Good afternoon to each one of you. Welcome to the Charles Elliott Weniger Society for Excellence annual meeting, our 45th annual meeting. Welcome also to those who are joining us via media. I invite you to join me in an invocation. Dear Lord, we thank you for this day, a day divinely given, a day to remember and to celebrate, a time to look back, a time to stand in the present and to anticipate the future. We are here this afternoon to honor Dr. Weniger, a man who strove for excellence and lived his life in love. We thank you for what he has done and pray that he will continue to inspire as his story is told. In Jesus' name, amen. It was in 1974 that three friends of Dr. Weniger brought to fruition a plan that they had been creating for some time. Those three were Jerry Pettis, Clinton Emerson, John Osborne. And out of their meeting, the Weniger Society was begun. Originally, it was at Pacific Union College, and then later it moved down here to Loma. In 2014, the Society introduced the plan for fellows that you have seen in the bulletin. This is an opportunity to recognize up-and-coming leaders in the accredited North American Adventist institutions and colleges and universities, that is. And this year again, in 2020, there are 13 new fellows, which means that all of those who can participate have taken the opportunity again to participate this year. I want to pause and recognize the Weniger board members. Invite you to stand. We have Donna Carlson, Bonnie Dwyer, Bill Emerson, Larry Garrity, Dan and Betsy Matthews, and Randy Roberts, and I am the current president of the Society. Invite you to remain standing, if you will. And I invite the spouses, the spouses and any laureates present to stand, and their immediate family. Any laureates and families, thank you. And any spouses and immediate family of laureates who have passed away. Thank you, you may be seated. Again this year in the program, we make available the complete list of honorees to date, 178, and there will be 4 more today, which brings us to 182. And if you haven't taken the time, I think it's worth your doing so to look back all the way to 1974 and remember those who led in the past, and it will bring us into the future. And the future you will see portrayed as the new college students are introduced. Here are the leaders of the future of Adventism. Following the program this afternoon, there will be out in the courtyard a reception, and it honors the memory of Bill Lovelace, who was a 2000 recipient and, of course, a long-time senior pastor of this church in 2 times two time periods that he served. And after the program, the best place to find the laureates will be out in that area, because those who are accompanying them will escort them out, and then we'll all be together out there.
With the passing of time, there are fewer and fewer of us who have the blessing of remembering Dr. Weniger personally. We are honored this afternoon to have one of his students with us. Warren L. Johns has joined us this afternoon, and he is going to share with us by video his memories, some of his memories, of being a student of Dr. Weniger. Thank you for being here, Warren.
It's a privilege to look back in time, way back to 1950, when I had the opportunity to go to the Seventh Adventist Seminary and sit at the feet of a truly outstanding Seventh Adventist church educator, Dr. Weniger. There are three things that impacted my life and the lives of, I'm sure, all of his students. The first is his demeanor and his gentlemanly conduct as a professional educator. I never saw him enter a room of a class without walking in, striding in, with a smile on his face. He was always upbeat. He was always direct. He taught us not only to be professional gentlemen, he extended it further to make us speak as to what we think a professional gentleman ought to be. I remember sitting on a panel discussing the way a professional gentleman should dress, the kind of suit he ought to wear, the kind of shoes he ought to wear. That was easy for him to teach us that way, because that's the way Dr. Weniger was. It certainly applies to being a lawyer. You don't ever show up in courtroom without being a gentleman. He said, when you do research and you come across something that is worth quoting or referring to in the future, save it, write it down, keep it. Because if you don't, you forget about it, or at least forget where you saw it or read it. For anybody that's ever going to write a book or give a speech or make a presentation in court, every tiny bit of data and evidence can be used as long as you have it accessible. Finally, he outlined for us the difference between material that was really worthwhile and material that was junk. If you're writing on a subject or speaking on a subject, you want to have a primary resource. If there's an event in history, a letter or a diary or something that was written or saved by somebody who was present at that event, that's a primary source. A secondary source is helpful, and it may be written by somebody who was not at that event. But if you check out who that person was, who that secondary source was, that can be valuable too if that was an honest, honorary person. He then pointed out that beyond that, there's a lot of material that is speculation, is opinion, and he made the point, be very careful that you don't just rely on that kind of material. You'll want to go to the primary source. And I found out in law, hearsay, rumor has no evidentiary value in a legal court battle. Consequently, on those 3 points, I have nothing but happy memories of Dr. Weniger. He was a Christian gentleman to the end.
I really didn't need that. Is this on? Okay. Born to Seventh-day Adventist parents in the Nazi-occupied Netherlands in 1942, Reinder Bruinsma entered the world at a time and in a place much like our own, where tensions within the church were not far beneath the surface. In those days, many SDA pastors in Dutch churches were German, and Hitler's Adventist soldiers sometimes came to Sabbath services in uniform. Things were not easy at home either. When Reinder's father contracted the leukemia that was to cost him first his job and then his life, the family fell upon seriously hard times. For a number of years, they lived without indoor plumbing or decent heating in one of the old decommissioned windmills that in those days served as housing for Holland's poorest people. Despite these hardships, Reinder grew up an enthusiastic Adventist Christian whose ambition was to serve his church. To that end, he became and continues to be a student. In 1964, he received a bachelor's degree in theology from Newbold College. A year later, a master's in church history from Andrews University. And this one came despite opposition from the brethren in the Netherlands, who gave him no support because they weren't keen on having what they thought of as an overeducated clergy. Returning to Europe, he soon earned a Bachelor's of Divinity in Church History from the University of London, King's College, and after a 6-year tour of duty in Africa, also got a PhD from the same institution. Although this time it was with the help of a more enlightened boss, Jan Paulsen. In 1994, his dissertation, this is a mouthful, a critical analysis of Seventh-day Adventist attitudes toward Roman Catholicism, was published by Andrews University Press, and it sold 3,000 copies. Not too bad for a doctoral dissertation. As you can read in the program, in the years outside the formal academy, Reinder, along with his wife Afje, a talented artist, has served the Adventist Church in numerous capacities and in many places. Often, wherever he found himself, he would reach out in friendship to other faith communities. Sometimes these friendships got him into trouble. In Cameroon, when the Catholic Missions Press broke down, Reinder agreed to print the program for the Pope's visit. Later rebuked by one of his administrative superiors, he said his only regret was that he hadn't done it for free. The brief bio in your program describes Reinder as a translator, and it is the case that he has translated a number of Christian books, some Adventist and some not. SDA authors whose works he has rendered into Dutch include Ellen White, Richard Rice, George Knight, Norskov Olsen, and our own John Pauline. More often, however, Reinder has seen his own 30 books, plus numerous articles and sermons, translated by other people into Danish, Spanish, Swedish, Portuguese, Japanese, German, Hungarian, Latvian, and even Russian. His own faith journey, I think, can be seen in the titles of some of the books. In 1998, it's time to stop rehearsing what we believe and start looking into what difference it makes. In 2000, Matters of Life and Death. In 2018, In All Humility, saying no to last generation theology. And just this year, I Have a Future, Christ's Resurrection and Mine. But it is his 2016 book, Facing Doubt, a book for Adventist believers on the margins, that is my special favorite. At his core, Reinder Bruinsma is a pastor, and his writings are a bridge built of scholarship and common sense. He's a realist who admits to concerns about the future of the church, and he does not pretend to have all the answers to complicated existential questions. But he does suggest some reasonable and possible solutions. And I can testify personally to his ability to counsel people facing one of life's most important decisions. Think carefully about such a serious step, he told me, when Jeff and I were contemplating marriage. But do not let an opportunity for happiness slip away out of fear. He was right. The theme of Reinder's homily at our wedding 16 months ago was commitment, a word that well describes his own lifelong relationship to his faith. An intellectual omnivore, he nonetheless maintains an unstinting affirmation of his faith, and he has made it possible for many others to do the same. Reinder? Thanks, Ted. I am very pleased, so pleased, to be able to present you with this Charles Eliot Weniger Society for Excellence Award for 2020.
Nobody could have been more surprised than I was when I received a message from the president of the Charles Eliot Weniger Society informing me that I had been selected as one of the recipients of the award in 2020. I wondered what was so outstanding about my life and work that I should receive that honor. And when I looked at the list of the men and women who in years past received the award, it was not immediately obvious to me that I should be included in that august group of people. However, in the months that have passed since, I have become increasingly appreciative of having been deemed worthy of this award. I look back at a church career of over 40 years and of another 12 years of continuing service to the church since my official retirement. It's been an interesting and mostly satisfying journey. It has not been without challenges and some hiccups, but I can honestly say that I have had a full and sometimes even adventurous life as I served the Adventist Church. And I can add that in general, the church has been good to me. It's been a privilege to work in a number of different areas of church work, at different levels of the organization, and in a number of different countries and even continents. And I should add that that was only possible because of the continuous and consistent support of my wife, Aafje, of now over 55 years. Very early on in my work for the church, I decided that I would always try to be true to myself. I am who I am. And the church entities that employed me had to accept who I am. I have, over the decades, always tried to stay true to that principle. I would not surrender my opinion if I believed that what I thought was true and was the honest way to go. Some people argue that it is impossible to be in church leadership and speak your mind. I have come to the conclusion that that is not quite true. I have generally been quite outspoken, as some of you know, but I've never sold my soul. That does not mean that one has to be stupid and always say just anything at any time to anyone. But I have functioned in the church, I think, without surrendering my integrity and my ideals and principles. I have possibly, as a result, missed certain promotions, and I may from time to time have been passed over for membership in important committees. But I've always tried not to be bitter when that happened and to remain loyal to my church. And a good sense of humor, I think, has always been a valuable asset. Over the years, my preaching, lecturing, and writing has moved me in a direction that has not universally been appreciated. In fact, from time to time, I have heard that maybe I should hand in my credentials, as it was felt that I had gone somewhat astray in my theology. But I've also seen how a particular segment of the church did value my contribution. In recent years, I have increasingly focused on speaking and writing for those who are struggling with doubt, and for the many men and women, young and old, who have left the church or are on the margins of the church. Quite regularly, people have told me or written to me saying that my work has helped them to stay in the church or even return to it. As today I received the George Eliot Weniger Award of Excellence, I take it as a sign of appreciation for that particular aspect of my ministry. It makes me happy that it has been noted. And it is a great encouragement for me to continue my ministry as long as I can along those lines. Thank you so much for the honor you have given me today and for the encouragement it gives me for the future. Thank you.
Of all the people who might be introduced on this stage, the best known and the one who needs no introduction here is Richard Hart, president of Loma University Adventist Health Sciences Center, the umbrella corporation that includes the enterprise's academic, healthcare, and research organizations. And yet, this is my honored task. A graduate of Walla Walla University, Dr. Hart earned his MD degree from Loma Linda University School of Medicine in 1970, followed by a Doctor of Public Health and International Health at Johns Hopkins University in 1977, also becoming board certified in preventive medicine. In his 50-year career, Dr. Hart has served Loma Linda University in a variety of ways that include chair of the School of Public Health's Department of Health Sciences, director of the Center for Health Promotion, chair of the School of Medicine's Department of Preventive Medicine, dean of the School of Public Health, and now president and CEO of the university. As is well known, Dr. Hart's vision extends beyond the walls of Loma Linda, not only to the local communities, but also to the villages and towns, the hospitals and mission clinics, in the farthest reaches of the globe. He has served as chief of party for a USAID project in Tanzania, where he developed a national maternal and healthcare program that is still a model for Africa today. His passion for humanitarian service has led to the development of a variety of programs here at Loma Linda University, including Students for International Mission Service, SIMS, and Social Action Community Health Systems, SACS, and a local low-cost clinic for the medically underserved, and more recently to the establishment of the San Manuel Gateway College part of Loma Linda University's San Bernardino campus. While some of this academic community might wish that Dr. Hart spent more of his time on their issues here at home, he is greatly admired for modeling for his faculty and students a personal commitment in terms of his time and influence to the mission of the university he leads, to make man whole. It is a widely known secret that most of the out-of-the-way Adventist mission hospitals in Africa and Asia would not exist today were it not for the leadership and care of Dr. Hart and the medical personnel that he sends them in his capacity as president of Adventist Health International, or AHI, a management corporation established to restore Adventist mission hospitals worldwide. As a consultant to the World Health Organization, Dr. Hart has established health promotion services in numerous hospitals and was responsible, for instance, in developing the National Health Plan for the Marshall Islands under the U.S. Department of the Interior. In other words, Dr. Hart is a living example of the type of visionary service for which the pioneers sacrificed to build this health center. A close observer told me that there is not a lazy bone in his body, and that he continually works diligently to his own hurt. Not motivated by money, he demonstrates the right balance of proclamation and social action. In his January notes from the president, which he sends out monthly, Dick Hart wrote, quote, "I noticed as our family in this Spokane household migrates from lighted tree to kitchen to snowy walks, that even when the talk quiets, the bonds that hold us together never slacken, and it just feels good to hang out together. This is the value of relationships, of feeling part of a family that shares common beliefs and commitments. That is the same glue that he holds organizations like universities and hospitals, communities, and even churches together. I pray for that spirit to prevail in our world today, and especially in my world of relationships. As we begin this new decade, may I do my part quietly, effectively, and with persistence to achieve that goal." It is not a foregone conclusion that a Winiger Award would go to the president of Loma Linda. It is to be expected that all who hold that office do so because he or she is capable of doing a good job, of course. But this award, as you've heard, is given because the recipient has gone beyond the call of duty and done his job with excellence. That is, in the manner characterized by the renowned Charles Weniger. So the Winiger Society is here today to recognize that Richard Hart is indeed achieving his goal and doing so with excellence. So congratulations, Dick, and God bless you in your continuing ministry.
When a person joins an organization such as a church, certainly such as the Adventist Church, you make a public statement to a certain set of standards, a certain set of beliefs. When you become employed by that organization, the scrutiny increases, and you accept that as part of that obligation. When you move into a leadership position, that scrutiny increases even more. And what you realize is now you're not being looked at just for the administrative decisions you may make, but for indeed the comments you may make about any other topic, including your personal life and all your endeavors. And I want to commend my colleagues this afternoon, and receiving the award for achieving those goals. As I have read about Dr. Weniger, it's tempting to think he lived in a simpler time, when values were clear, when decisions were easier. But only history can answer that for sure. But today, we live in a complex society, if I can say in a polarized society, calling out the absolute best in those of us who are visible proponents of a particular belief or institution. This morning here at the University Church, they launched a new series, a three-part series, referred to as 6-8 religion, referring to Micah 6:8, talking about justice, mercy, and humility. I wish we could be measured by those standards. I wish this church would be concerned about those issues more than a lot of the other issues that guide us today. Because truly that is the values that Christ would call out in each of us. Those are the principles that make us unique, that make us special. So this evening, thank you for the award. Thank you for the privilege of being part of a church, of an organization that espouses to those higher principles. It's a privilege I don't take lightly. It's a challenge, I think, for all of us as we seek to walk the way that God would have us walk. Thank you very much.
Andrea Luxton is probably one of the worthiest recipients of this award because Dr. Charles Weniger established his legendary presence at Andrews University. And Andrea continues that tradition as an English professor, as a provost, as a president. And so you are worthy of this honor, not just because you're at Andrews, but because of the 4 traits that you have seen in your program that are so important as we look at awardees: spirituality, academic, civic service, and leadership. Our lives have intersected in many ways over the last several decades, including service at the K-12 level as a teacher and principal and union and conference level, our family's service to the General Conference, our higher ed presidencies, our achievement of academic PhDs in the Maryland area, DC area. And I could offer some personal comments because we've been in a lot of meetings together. And I could tell you all of the wonderful things that we have enjoyed together. And even today, we were having a very vibrant conversation about higher ed traditions and trends in the Adventist Church. But what I thought I would do, Andrea, is to actually go to several of your colleagues. And since we were limited to 5 minutes, I said, can you give me a 1 or 2 sentence description of Andrea's work with you in various phases of your career? So we'll start with Lauren Agri, the president of Burman University, who was your vice president for academic administration, is now the president of what used to be Canadian University College. And this is what he writes: a consummate professional and leader, Andrea provided a strong sense of direction, including others in conversation, but always knowing where she was headed. While not tall, according to height standards, she stands heads and shoulders above her peers as a leader, truly one who others would want to follow and support. Dr. Niels Erik Andreasen, he called you to be his provost at Andrews University, and then you succeeded him. And this is what Niels Erik wrote: Andrea Luxton's contributions to Seventh-day Adventist education can be attributed to her extraordinary personal and professional gifts and skills honed during many years of exemplary service. Among them are her keen intellect, sensitive judgments, charming personality, respect for the people around her, along with a deep and genuine spirituality. She has navigated through what was once mostly a man's world with disarming ease, yet principled determination. Adventist higher education is better because of her contributions. And I would just, as an aside, say that a lot of us had a lot of fun listening to you preach a sermon at the General Conference session where they were voting on women's ordination. Amy Rosenthal, one of your young deans at Andrews, wrote, "She has the ability to put people at ease, and she conveys a quiet, steadfast authority. Her responses always seem thoughtful based on a thorough review of the situation." And then Dr. Umberto Rossi, who was the world education leader and watched your career for many years at various levels, said this: "You embody the best qualities of a Christian scholar and a wise educational administrator. Wherever she has served in the Adventist system, the institutions flourished under her direction, always with a sensitive personal touch." And one last one. We have to go back to Merry England, to your former colleague, John Beldam, who's now the principal of Newbold College. And he sends his congratulations from your colleagues at Newbold College on your receipt of this award. You have made a great contribution to Newbold for many years as a student, as a teacher of English literature, as principal between 1997 and 2001. Thank you for your ongoing support of the college and for keeping in touch with so many of us. Because I have been out of church work for about a decade, our lives have not intersected as much as we used to. So I keep up with you through Focus, the Andrews University alumni paper, which I've always considered to be one of the best. And I went back to review some of the things that you have written. Of course, as a former English teacher and a Milton scholar, those columns are filled with beautiful writing and great ideas that grow out of the depth of your heart. I enjoyed reading your column about the importance of what you called the healing university, and about the university being so much more than a stream. It appears that Ezekiel 47 is an important chapter in the Bible for you, and it's a chapter we were looking at our Sabbath School class this morning with Dr. Tonstad. When you were inaugurated as president of Andrews, you talked about this imagery of the university being a constant banquet. Don't you love that idea? A banquet for students. And then rather than presenting a dry strategic plan, 5 issues of the Focus did 5 storylines. And what story was going to come out of each part of the strategic plan? Those ideas, for me, transcended Andrews and went to the bigger purposes of Adventist higher education. These are very challenging times for American higher education, not just in the Adventist church, but in general, especially for small, private, residential campuses located in rural areas, made even harder by a campus that relies so much on international students who are dependent on visas and homeland security, and even attitudes among many international students about whether they're even welcome to participate in the banquet that we have in the United States anymore. But as a former international student and this sort of indomitable spirit that you bring from your English roots, you're the ideal leader for Andrews. There's a famous English expression that began during World War II: keep calm and carry on. You bring a calmness about you, but you carry on with a strong vigor, these traits of spirituality and academic, civic service, and leadership, the traits that Charles Weniger would have us find in the awardees with this award. So Andrea, if you would come up as the audience gives you their applause to accept this award this afternoon. Congratulations.
Well, thank you very much, Dick. It was also a surprise to me to hear that I was going to be the recipient of an award today, and I would like to thank the committee very much for that honor. As I looked at the list of those that have received it before, I saw 2 of my personal mentors there. Mentors because of the characteristics and values that they had. And I also have considerable respect and admiration for all of those that are receiving the award today, too, all of whom I also know. A few days ago, I was at an alumni meeting, and a young woman came up to me, and she asked me a question. At the alumni meetings, you never quite know what people are going to come up with, but this was an unusual question. She said, in all your years of leadership, what is the one leadership quality that you think has been most helpful to you? And I thought about that and said, well, if I could find one, what would it be? And eventually I decided on this, because I believe this is true. So I think the most important thing to me has been to find a way to still myself enough to be able to listen to God's voice. And as I've thought about that since, and I've looked back over my life and my career, those most difficult moments, those challenges maybe with the organization and bureaucracy of the church, maybe even the challenge sometimes of being a woman in leadership. Those have been the times when I have needed to find a way to still my soul and hear the voice of God. One of the times that I recall that happened, maybe one of the first. I was 19 years old. I had been through an Adventist school. Both my parents were Adventist teachers and great models of Adventist teachers. And I had found my way, as most people do in Britain, to a public university. And while I was in that public university, and I was reflecting on what I was doing, and thinking about the difference between what I was experiencing and what I'd experienced a year ago in an Adventist setting, I made the very unusual step after this moment of being able to be still and listen, of leaving there and going to Newbold College. That was probably the biggest turning point now as I consider it in my life. I do not believe that I would be doing what I'm doing now, or have had all the amazing opportunities I've had to work in the Adventist church, if I had not done that U-turn at that time and gone into Adventist education. And it is my experiences that I had at Newbold and then later doing my master's degree at Andrews University, just watching, sensing the environment, valuing not just what I was learning, but the people that were there, that set me on the path I've gone to. And so I just want to give a shout out to Adventist education. It's been my life, but I'm not saying that just because it's been my life. I see every day students experiencing what I experienced, and their lives being impacted and changed because of it. And I thank you as the Weniger Society for the scholarships that you give to young people, young future leaders who are going through all our campuses. Because our church, our communities, and our world will be the better because of them. Well, you heard my background is English literature, so I'm sorry, but I've got to finish with a bit of Milton. John Milton, one of his most well-known poems is a short sonnet. And in that sonnet, maybe written after he'd already gone blind, and maybe focusing on his blindness, but maybe some other things, looks at that strange balance between that call to duty, of constantly going to and fro, doing what God wants us to do, and also standing and waiting. I'm just going to read those last few lines, because if I was to encapsulate how I felt things have been for me over the past many years now, is to try and find that balance. The doing, the being, and the waiting and the listening. And these are just the last few lines of this poem. God doth not need either man's work or his own gifts. Who best bear his mild yoke, they serve him best. His state is kingly. Thousands at his bidding speed and post, or land and ocean without rest. They also serve, who only stand and wait. Thank you very, very much.
Good afternoon. To introduce our fourth speaker, our fourth honoree and speaker this afternoon, I'd like to take a light moment and ask you to consider a few questions in the Jeopardy mode. Be sure to think of your response in the form of a question. Number one, it is the concept that is the common core value among three world religions. Number two, he is the biblical prophet known for his social justice views and God's omnipotence and divine judgment. Number three, it is the root cause of human suffering. Think about those. These are not trivial ideas, even if they can be put into phrases similar to those used by Alec Trebek. Pursuing them has taken Ganoune Diop around the world into prisons to meet with incarcerated church members and administrators, to the United Nations and its committees, to world conclaves of Christian leaders. He cut short a visit to Angola this week so he could be with us today. There was reason for great joy in Angola because two church leaders who had been in jail for 62 days were finally released after much negotiation and work on his part. Before he left, he prepped the church leaders, including Elder Ted Wilson, on the protocols for meeting with the president of Angola that took place on Thursday. Such negotiations are part of his responsibility as director of the Department of Public Affairs and Religious Liberty of the General Conference. His department is also involved in working with the embassies to ensure that delegates to the General Conference session are able to get visas, despite the various travel bans that currently exist here in the U.S. Another hat that he wears is the Secretary General of the International Religious Liberty Association, where his duties include bringing together international world leaders, both political and religious, for discussions of religious liberty. As Secretary of the World Conference of Secretaries of the Christian World Communions, he helps to convene an annual international meeting of Christian leaders. In all of these roles, he writes and presents continuously explaining the philosophical concepts of freedom and religious liberty. Colleagues at the General Conference comment that he demonstrates his values in the way that he treats people. As an illustration, I was told of a meeting some years ago in his office when a member of a politician from South America was visiting in his office, and a cleaning lady came in to empty the trash. With an appropriate pause in the diplomatic conversation, he greeted the cleaning lady by name, asked about her family, before continuing with the diplomatic issue at hand. Everyone is valued equally. His initial appointment at the General Conference was as the director of the 5 World Religions Study Centers. This was during the administration of Jan Paulsen, who sent Dr. Diop to a meeting of the world religious bodies in Edinburgh, Scotland. The paper that he presented caught the eye of several of the various denominations there who invited him to speak to their religious groups. Seeing that he was creating positive connections for the church, he was invited to be associate director in the Department of Public Affairs and Religious Liberty. Then he was named the Adventist ambassador to the United Nations. And 5 years ago, he became the director of the Department of Public Affairs and Religious Liberty. A native of Senegal who was educated first in France at Cologne, then later at the University of Paris, the Catholic University of Paris, the Sorbonne, and also in the United States at Andrews University, he is a lifelong student of the Bible, philosophy, theology, art, literature, and also a concert-trained flautist. Pursuing questions of social justice within the Scripture, particularly the Old Testament, has been a passion. He recently wrote the introduction and commentary for the book of Amos, as well as 7 other books of the Old Testament for the Andrews University Study Bible. How his studies led to a career as a religious ambassador is still somewhat of a mystery to him. As he describes his path, he sees God's hand opening doors, leading him along. The overarching thread that weaves together all of his activities is his goal of helping to develop a worldwide culture of human rights based on universal values, especially the promotion of and protection of freedom of religion or belief. The way that he goes about his diplomatic work is with a light touch, a quick wit, and a sense of humor, always ready to disarm a situation. So the questions to those Jeopardy statements are, number 1, it is the concept that is the common core value among the 3 world religions. What is righteousness? He is the biblical prophet known for his social justice, God's omnipotence and divine judgment. Who is Amos? It is the root cause of human suffering. What results from the despising of the infinite worth and dignity of every person? Ganoune, for your work fostering mutual understanding between various faith organizations and other world religions and philosophies, for your work training leaders in capacity building in peace, justice, and human rights, the pillars of the United Nations, we are honored to present to you the Charles Eliot Winiger Award for Excellence. And we look forward to hearing from you today about the importance of human dignity.
Thank you very much, Barney, for those gracious words. Thank you also to the Weniger Society, the Executive Committee, I would like to begin with a confession. When I received the message that I will be one of the honorees, it was like a humor from God. The reason why I'm saying this, it was a time when I was being slandered incredibly in the internet, basically. Why? Because here is a Seventh-day Adventist who met with Pope Francis. That was like, for some, the sin against the Holy Spirit. Why? Because there are some people that should be outside of the scope of our relationship. So I received that call at a time that probably I needed to hear something of that sort. I thank God that every time He encourages me, and this is an encouragement, I see it as such, it is like an encouragement to continue to do what I'm doing regardless. Because I have determined that I will not discriminate against any human being, regardless. I have decided I will not criminalize any human being. That's not within my power to do, since I have given myself wholeheartedly to God. So thank you for the encouragement. I would like for this Clinton Emerson, this yearly address, I entitled it, Window to a Larger World, 2020, Pulses of Global Conversations. Looking at our world from the perspective of international affairs, 2020 is set to be an eventful year. The first week, a few weeks, by the way, have shown that this is not an overstatement. Our world presents multifaceted wounds in nearly every domain of human existence. Now, at the outset, let me specify that the following reflection is not an apocalyptic speculation regarding all that is wrong with our world, nor is it a cataclysmic series of predictions of signs of the times and end-time events. Rather, I would like to submit to your consideration that the international community, what the international community rather is focusing on today. How are people trying to find solutions to better the living of billions of people around the globe, in which parts are more connected than generally assumed? What happens in Tokyo or Los Angeles is not without consequences for the species living in the Amazon. What happened in Hubei in China is currently mobilizing scientists from around the world. So what are the issues which attract public conversations, debates, and polarized opinions also? In the global political world, the United Nations is a significant hub to test the pulse of global conversations and priorities. In 2020, several UN agencies and activities put emphasis on important global issues that seem to matter to the international community. So 5 of them will probably take center stage. A 6th one emerged in recent weeks with the outburst of the coronavirus. The latter seems to mobilize epidemiologists from around the globe. What has taken center stage as 2020 unfolds are the following. The first one And allow me to just remind you that the title is Window to a Larger World. What is happening in our world? So first, climate change, climate crisis, and climate justice. A major issue which will continue to draw global attention and mobilization is variously designated as climate change, as I mentioned, climate crisis, and climate justice. The connections of the so-called greenhouse effect, global warming, desertification, rise of the ocean level, and poverty with its connections to migrations have been established beyond reasonable doubt. This issue, however, will continue to steer passionate advocacy, but also stubborn denial. In spite of the lack of consensus at the recent 25th meeting of the UN climate talks in Madrid, ecosystem restoration has nevertheless become a global priority. The United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration will be launched, by the way, in 2021. So that has become a global priority. The need for urgent climate action seems to mobilize various sectors of civil society, from thousands of scientists to hundreds of thousands of youth activists, by the way. Another issue, gender equity and equality. 2020 is considered a pivotal year for the realization of gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls everywhere. The issue of gender equity and equality will continue to mobilize human rights agenda. Actually, according to UN Women, the epoch-defining resolutions of the Beijing +25, arguably, by the way, the most comprehensive blueprint for advancing women's rights, will be revisited to assess progress and challenges. They will continue to generate deep debates and divisions as to the scope of these rights, including, by the way, among religious traditions. Nevertheless, this topic has been sealed as a priority and as an incontrovertible part of not only the previous Millennium Development Goals, but also the current agreed Sustainable Development Goals. Goals 5 and 10 in particular focus on women's rights. This topic will not go away. Another important topic, elections and the question of democracy versus populism. At national levels, the election in the US promised to impact several interrelated issues, not only regarding domestic and international affairs, but also pertaining to foreign policies, international affairs, and the intersections of public policy and morality. Another topic meaningful in 2020, the issue of global persecution of Christians. A gloomy reality has drawn more attention, the rise and persecution of Christians and, of course, other minorities. This global phenomenon most definitely will continue to be part of conversations and plans of action. It has also been instrumentalized, I must say, and politicized to the extent that some governments have seized the opportunity to champion the cause of persecutions of Christians in the Middle East, for example, but only to advance their own political agenda. Of course, the issue of religious liberty and civil rights. A surprising turn has occurred in the domain of religious liberty. In the current global context, the framing of rights is at times done in competition with one another. The misunderstanding of freedom of religion or belief or religious liberty, positioning it against other civil rights, and the accusation, by the way, that religious freedom has become a tool for discrimination it has become urgent to revisit the very nature of freedom of religion or belief. So a clarification as to its content can be very helpful today. What is the meaning, significance, and scope of religious freedom, also called by the international community freedom of religion or belief? What is appealing about this particular good that people dedicate their lives to promote? Now, despite the fact that more than 5 billion people do not enjoy this freedom, and despite the fact that its universality is challenged in academic circles, its importance cannot be underestimated. Religious liberty or freedom of religion or belief is part of the repertoire of the international community, used in legal, political, cultural, existential, and international relations context. It is positioned as Article 18 of the International Human Rights Barometer, that is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Along with civil rights, religious freedom is recognized as a constitutional provision designed to secure the prerogative of every citizen. In the United States, to underline its primacy among fundamental freedoms, many experts call it the first freedom. In fact, it undergirds all other freedoms. It presupposes freedom of thought, of conscience, and of choice. It is key to self-determination. Religious freedom translates into freedom of association, of assembly, and worship. But there is more to religious freedom than meets the eye. From a faith-based perspective, religious freedom is in fact a sign, a symbol, and even a seal of a covenant, of a possible contract to signify how human beings should relate to one another. That is, with respect, deference, and even reverence before the mystery of life. It is a sign according to which we should relate to any other human being with care, caution, without fear, and most certainly without violence. Religious liberty then becomes freedom from being harmed, hurt, humiliated, discriminated against, or criminalized, and subjugated to any form of violence. This freedom from violence should help us reimagine what life could be if it were fully embraced. The outcome would be peace and security. But there is still more to religious freedom. It is more than a rediscovery during the Renaissance or an insight from the Enlightenment era. Religious freedom is not just a right, a legal or legislative provision to promote and protect. There is something about religious freedom which transcends the realm of legislative provisions. It is not just something to be voted by lawmakers. It goes beyond that. Its roots are in fact deeper than social arrangements. Again, from a faith-based perspective, and this is what we bring to the table, religious freedom is primarily a divine attribute. And since from this perspective humans are created in the image of God, humans reflect divine attributes. And of course, a theologian would specify communicable attributes, that is. So religious freedom is part of the image of God the Creator. This divine attribute is therefore reflected in humans. It is moreover the root and tangible expression of human dignity. You know, human conscience, the locus of moral decision, corroborates this dignity. To deprive humans of religious freedom is to dismiss their conscience and trample on their dignity. Everyone ought to be respected on the basis of human conscience, something like an inner sanctuary in every person. Freedom of religion or belief, or freedom of conscience and of conviction is therefore primordially an intrinsic attribute in every human being. It is connected to what it means to be human in the first place. In other words, when I hear about religious freedom, I'm thinking about a sign of our very humanity. Nelson Mandela eloquently stated, to deny any person their human rights is to challenge their very humanity. So, unquote. So, to deny any person or any institution, by the way, their religious freedom is to deny their humanity or institutional existence. Now, this is extremely important. Sometimes people will tell me, oh, you are surrendering the Seventh-day Adventist Church when you meet other Christians. Absolutely not. And I'm not being defensive by saying this, but clarifying. It would be impossible to put the Seventh-day Adventist Church under the umbrella of another church. Why? Because then the church will lose its conscience, its constitution, and our working policy would become irrelevant. Now, interestingly, when I meet politicians, usually nobody would say, oh, Ganoune Diop is now embracing the party of the politician. There will be no issue at that. But for whatever reason, when I meet, let's say, a bishop, a cardinal, or the pope, then, oh, he is now surrendering the Adventist church. It's not rational. But let me take this one step further. Why are Christians meeting? Why interfaith, interchurch relations? The mobilization of nations to create international organizations, to build bridges, and not continue to wage wars was a significant incentive, actually, and driver for Christian churches, for example, to begin talking to one another, to stop irrational animosity, wars, and to open the possibility to partner to do good to society. A brief reminder, I think, of key religious and geopolitical events and conflicts may be helpful to understand where we are today globally on our human collective experience. I would like to begin going back the 30 years war fought in Europe between 1618 and 1648. That war has brought a staggering number of 8 million deaths, after which it turned into, actually, the so-called Treaty of Westphalia, an event seen as the beginning of the European nation states as we know them today. The principle at that time, cuius regio, eius religio, basically the religion of the prince, becomes the religion of those living in that region, was adopted. It was a good step forward, but not yet the ideal arrangement for religious freedom. Now, identifying major world treaties such as that one can be a good entry point to understand the geopolitical and the global religious issues. Let's fast forward to World War I. This time, 16 million deaths. Nations were faced with a choice: continuing to wage wars and self-destruct, the destruction of the whole human family, or try to build bridges for peaceful coexistence. A new treaty came after that, after those 16 million deaths, the Treaty of Versailles. That treaty marked a new era in international relations, by the way. The creation of the League of Nations to mediate, arbitrate, solve problems before they escalate into open conflicts and wars was a major step forward towards peaceful coexistence. Now the question was, nations created an organization, League of Nations. But how about Christian churches? At the time, the Orthodox called other Christians to say, we cannot continue into conflict, waging wars among ourselves as Christians, while the world is trying to find solutions for peace. But unfortunately, that peace did not last long. World War II came with a staggering number this time, 60 million deaths. Now, after which, of course, a new organization, not the League of Nations, but the United Nations was created, and the UDHR, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, ratified on December 10, 1948. At that time, again, Christians start talking to one another. Can we stand aside while the world is trying to reconcile? It was during those years that the World Council of Churches was created. It was not by chance. And then also other organizations. Time will not allow me to go through all those. The organization of which I'm the secretary right now, the Conference of Secretaries of Christian World Communions, was actually founded in 1947. I mean, again, an effort to say, let's build peace together. That did not mean, let us now eradicate our differences. Let us all become one church. No. And that is what many people understand as being ecumenism. But the root cause undergirding the various international problems is actually the issue of violence. The world is somehow showing addiction to violence. Even the quest for power, prestige, privilege, position above others can be motivated by the most irresistible drive to dominate, to subjugate, and therefore to harm. That has become the dark side of human nature. To violate other people's integrity, whether physical, mental, emotional, social, and spiritual, is to injure their God-given dignity, as a matter of fact. Historically, our world has been the theater of incalculable violence, not just political, by the way, just such as during the time of the Roman Empire, the Munera, those famous cruel events to mark the hegemony of the emperor, and of course the midday executions and so forth. But I'm thinking here, mass violence as in genocide, but also personal, domestic, verbal, and non-spoken violence. Mute coercion meant to create fear and pressure. This is a form of oppression. At personal and collective levels, religious people are often tempted to use verbal violence in the name, by the way, of prophecy. We knew from the Apostle Paul that prophecy without love is nothing. Prophecy is at times weaponized, used to cover violence. The message of the Prince of Peace has been turned into violence, hate speech, discrimination, and criminalization of others. Taking metaphors of beast as real metonymy, meaning part of a web of evil, assimilating other people who believe differently with threats, conspiracy theories, and the resurgence of Inquisition, persecutions, and demonization of Roman Catholics. I need to read your dissertation, by the way. Think about this. Presuming that the Catholics have already received the mark of the beast. Whereas, according to Ellen White, the mark of the beast will be affixed during the last act of the drama of the great controversy, when a Sunday law will be imposed and forced upon all the inhabitants of the world. Then we can talk about the mark of the beast, not before. A mission to help people fall in love with Jesus can be turned into a proof that the Adventist message is irrelevant for educated people, learned one and higher classes in society. Ellen White lamented that during her time, people of influence were neglected. The name Seventh-day Adventist has two components, as you all know, but also two possible pitfalls when its essence is forgotten. The seventh day is an expression of the good news. Before being a commandment, it was the gift of God, who modeled what God expected from those created in God's image. The Sabbath was offered for the purpose of celebrating creation in God's image and the gift of life and fellowship in love. But it can be turned and confined into a test, confusing a God who is love with earthly monarch jealous and nervous about losing their prerogatives and privileges. Likewise, the word Adventist is part of the good news. It is called the blessed hope. It is the announcement of the healing of all the wounds of human existence. There will be no more sorrow, sickness, suffering, death, conflicts, hurt, harm, pain. Peace and harmony will finally become universal realities. At Jesus' second coming, there will be universal reconciliation, no more climate crisis, by the way. No longer gender inequality, and injustice. No more tribalism, ethnocentrism, racism, populist propaganda based on fake news. No more persecution of Christians or any minority or majority. No more trampling of any person's dignity or freedom to believe or not to believe. To commit to covenants according to the dictates of one's conscience will finally become universal again in a new world where there will be no violence, only peace and love. There is one thing that really attracted me in being Seventh-day Adventist. The idea that human beings, not just the Sabbath, but the idea that human beings at creation are created in the image of God, meaning in a filial relationship. Because that's simply what it means. Genesis 5. Adam and Eve had a son they called Seth, according to their image. Filial relationship. But there is another dimension to that. Being created in the image of God means being a temple of God. So that concretely means every human being I meet anywhere is actually a sacred person. More important than temples, more important than cathedrals, more important than shrines, mosques, and synagogues. If I truly believe that, then I will not intrude in people's conscience that sacred inner sanctuary where only God can access. That's the root of my commitment to defending religious freedom. Infinite respect for the infinite dignity, for the infinite worth of every human being created in the image of God. And I have dedicated my life, no regret for that, in order everywhere today to remind people who they really are. Not be measured by even their performances. Something very personal. A few days ago, I woke up 3 o'clock in the morning. I had a conversation with my daughter. And I didn't tell her this, so you will hear it for the first time. I was reflecting, because she has some choices right now, where to go, what to do, what school to choose to do an MD PhD there. And I told myself, and she knows I'm very discreet of not telling her what to do, where to choose, what to choose, because I respect her dignity and her choice. She's writing her story, and her story is not mine. It's her story. And I have to respect that. But somehow, when I woke up that early in the morning, reflecting, It was one of your pictures when she was 2 years old that came to me. And something came to my mind. I said, I really love this person. And I loved her when she could not do anything. She did not have a paycheck, no degree. She was totally, completely dependent. Right? And then I say, I thank God. Whatever she does, whatever she chooses, I am committed to respect the integrity of her person and of her choices. That is what I owe her, because she belongs to God. Her conscience, I have no access there. Only God has. What I can do is to pray that she will always choose to be her best for God. And I would like to have that same attitude with every person I meet. A kind of deference, even reverence before the mystery of life. So allow me to just make an appeal to each one of you here as I close. Remember who you are. You are not determined by your performances. Your excellence is hidden in Christ. And that excellence, God has planted it in each one of us. May we let God just unfold it in very many ways for the blessing of the world. And may I ask, paraphrasing the Sabbath School today, for the healing of the nations. Thank you very much.
You understand that we have embarked on a program with the Weniger Society to extend the values that the Weniger Society represents to next generations with scholarships. And we are awarding 13 scholarships today that Betsy and I will now introduce. Janie Jimenez is an honors student at Advent Health University. She's in an occupational therapy major program with plans to become a physician. Janie is campus ministries leader at AHU. Chaplain Acosta says of Janie that she is optimistic and proactively helpful with deep spiritual roots in the tradition of scholarship and excellence as portrayed by Dr. Charles E. Weniger.
Yosia Nuran came from Indonesia as a teenager and completed his high school at Heritage Academy in Tennessee. From the beginning, he has excelled in scholarship with a 4-point GPA and as a hard-working volunteer, able tutor, and teaching assistant. He is an evening caregiver for the last 2 years for an adult paraplegic. At Andrews University, he is a J.N. Andrews Scholar and presently is Vice President of the Michigan Mathematics Honor Society. His goal is to be a professor of mathematics.
Gerzina Bagri is a senior biology major at Burman University. She's on a track to apply for medicine at Loma Linda for 2021, Dr. Hart. Gerzina is the president and founder of Burman University Pre-Med Club and social vice president in the Student Association. Her parents are from Punjab in India. They came to Canada as teenagers. Their industry and hard work is providing Christian education for Gerzina and her younger siblings. At Burman, Gerzina's favorite time is Friday Vespers and Afterglow.
Kudawashi Gwasira is a senior nursing student at Kettering College. Comes from Zimbabwe via California State Polytechnic University. He's a major leader at Kettering as a resident assistant and in development of a happy, diverse environment. Kuda, as he is known, works as a surgery patient care associate at Kettering Medical Center. His love and care for patients has affirmed his desire upon graduation to return to California, where he will begin his profession as a nurse.
Patty Grazzino is a senior English major at La Sierra. Dr. Weniger would love that. Patty is a scholar in her own right. Her published writing is profound. Of her, professors say, Patty sets a positive example of the way Christians should act. And Patty is a thought leader that causes even her professors to think more deeply about a topic. And another of her teachers writes, Patty is one of the most sensitive and reliable tutors I've ever seen. She will be a great teacher.
Patty Grazzino Abigail E. Clark is pursuing PhD in nutrition at Loma Linda University School of Public Health. She is among the top 10% of students who have come through the program in the last 2 decades. Her scholarship is not only demonstrated by her high GPA, but by her research and roles as teaching assistant. Abigail holds membership in the American Society for Nutrition and has received the Nutrition Scholarship Award. She is caring and compassionate, reflecting the LLU motto, to make man whole.
Amalia Goldborn is a senior theology major at Oakwood University. She has maintained a 3.96 GPA throughout her time at Oakwood. She has served as ministry leader in several significant student services on campus and is known by her peers as a friendly person who always provides spiritual encouragement. Her broad range of interests includes outdoor activities, especially backpacking. Amalia is originally from California.
Alexander Ofisa is a senior theology major at Pacific Union College. Alexander declares he experiences miracles every day. Not the least of blessings is the privilege of being at PUC. He testifies that God saved him and transformed his life since he surrendered to God's call. Alexander lives and bears his testimony for the saving grace of Jesus Christ. He is committed to proclaiming God's grace as he anticipates a call to full-time gospel ministry.
Denver Nelson is enrolled at Southern Adventist University as a mathematics major, preparing to be a math teacher. He has chosen teaching because teachers have made such an impact on his life. He believes teaching helps shape society, and he chooses to be a positive influence on the students he hopes to have in his classrooms. In addition to study and other blessings, Denver enjoys on campus at Southern. He's a good cook and loves spending time with his friends.
Sherwin Caldwood. Sherman is a senior theology major at Southwestern Adventist University. He is the son of a minister and teacher. Being of an independent nature, by age 21, Sherwin was ably supporting himself. But his sidetrack from education was interrupted by hearing God's call to the gospel ministry. Through an amazing circuitous course, he moved out of the Southwest to Southwestern University. He is there studying and sharing effectively and trusting God for the resources to finish school. He says, God has touched the hearts of many, including yours, the Weniger Society, to help me complete my education.
Jordi Obregon is a sophomore theology major at Union College. His home is Wichita, Kansas. Jordi is active on Union College campus and serves as worship leader at the College Heights Church. Jordi's goals include continuing in school in preparation for ministry as a youth pastor. He adds, quote, "Thank you for the Weniger Fellow Student Scholarship. Your generosity and kindness will help me further my education here at Union College."
Born and raised in Harare, Zimbabwe, Takuzwa Madovi is a sophomore at Washington Adventist University studying nursing. His passion for helping others led him to healthcare, where he found nursing to be his present avenue of service. His ultimate goal after nursing education and service as a nurse is to be a physician. Takuzwa is not only an able scholar, but he is an active student leader who is sought by his classmates for encouragement and spiritual guidance.
Madison Tanner is a triplet at Walla Walla University. Yes, all three triplets are at WWU. But Madison went as a student missionary, which added a year to her education. As a result of her mission experience, she has chosen chaplaincy as her life work, hence her theology major. She works as women's dorm chaplain and rounds out her life and creative ministry as drama club president in line with her drama minor. Madison and her family are very grateful for her selection as a recipient of the Weniger Fellowship Scholarship. This is just a sample of the scholars that we get to represent here at the Weniger Society, and we had a difficult time reducing their biographies to this short paragraph. Some of them were pages long, and we respect them and enjoy what we have learned about them. Now, is Patty here? Okay, we thought we were going to be fortunate enough this afternoon to have one of these scholars present with us today, but that didn't happen. But now I have the privilege of introducing to you a young lady who you see in your program, who is Letty Ann Cordero, a 2019 recipient of the scholarship, and she is here to say what this means to her. Welcome, Letty Ann.
Hello. So on behalf of the many students you have blessed with your givings over the years, I would like to say thank you. What you do is giving more than just money, financial help. What you do is you inspire individuals who are seeking to improve the world and be of service to their Creator. For me, I will tell you, yes, I had a list as well as these students, but despite gaining my Bachelor's of Science here at Loma Linda University, becoming a registered dietitian, halfway through my magisterial work, at the age of 23, I was at a deep, dark place. I began to hear comments from different people outside of my family saying, "Letty Ann, how could you just be a dietitian? You should have been a doctor. Someone like you is wasting your brain, and you are not serving God to your true potential." Comments like that happened in different waves, began to put me in a hole and saying, perhaps after all these years, maybe I actually don't know the voice of God. Maybe I was wrong about this calling that I've been passionate about since I was 15 years old. I truly believe that being a dietitian was the person I was meant to be in this world, and comments like that put me in a hole. As I was going through that kind of pit, I began to go through financial issues as well in school. Of course, you know, students, we have tuition, we have meals, we have dorm fees, and we have books. And then in addition to that, we just have random fees for almost attending many things outside of our class opportunities. With that going on, car troubles, rotten ceilings almost on the verge of collapsing, I thought about withdrawing from my magisterial program. Because of this, I began to withdraw from a lot of ministries and jobs that I loved because my mental load couldn't handle it anymore. But I soon rang my phone and I got a call that somehow along the way, someone had nominated me to get this scholarship. And with that, not knowing, just teachers sneakily taking my curriculum vitae and submitting it in, I found out that you would be giving me something that says, hey, we recognize what you do, we recognize your passion, and we are telling you amen to that and amen to your future. Because of that, I stayed in school, used some of that money that you donated, and continued my education. Life wasn't perfect, but it told me that people like you value what I do for this church. And despite not being a doctor, being a dietitian is more than enough. I follow the words that my mother kept telling me by Ellen G. White. There is nothing to fear except forgetting how Christ has led us in the past. And I will tell you, as years will continue to go by, I will remember this scholarship that you gave me as a reminder of what I do, and that it is a way to remember that I will continue to be a servant of God. I want you to know, as you continue to donate your money, that what you do will impact the student's life far more than their tuition. It will affect their goals and their relationship with Christ, and you can save someone's soul as well. I ask when you donate your money that you say a little prayer and go in a little circle and pray for who they are and who they continue to be. Sincerely from me and the many students you have blessed, thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Letty, and I think I'll just have the ushers pick up the offering at this point. The Charles Eliot Winiger was admired and revered by his many students. For many years, he served as an inspiration and a mentor to students and Adventist pastors. His distinguished professional career included academic appointments to Pacific Union College in Northern California, Columbia Union College, now Washington Adventist University in the District of Columbia area, and the seminary at Andrews University in Berrien Springs. Over the past 5 years, the Society has provided 48 scholarships totaling over $20,000. These educational scholarships, along with educational institutions' matching funds, have provided deserving students over $40,000 for their education pursuits. The Weniger Society has increased the amounts of the scholarship awards in response to your generous contributions. We hope that you take this envelope and put in your contribution, either a check or large donations in cash, and put those in the plate today. And today we're once again going to ask you to generously provide more money for our scholarship program that helps students receive a quality Adventist education. And if the ushers will come forward now, we'll collect the offerings. We thank you for your continued financial assistance to this wonderful program. Thank you.
Attentive I see the world that he made around me and all the glories it holds, but hearts mold. And so I look forward to the beauty of what will come true. In waiting, I'll never settle for the temporal. I'd rather be true. I'd rather have Jesus than silver or gold. I'd rather be his than have riches untold. I'd rather have Jesus than houses or lands. I'd rather be led by his nail-pierced hand than to be the king of a vast domain, or be held in sin's dread sway. I'd rather have Jesus than anything this world affords today. They tempt, they tease, and they try, but his mission I shall not deny. Though enticing earthly prospects may be, I'm working towards God's eternity. So I share his love and his aim. His soon coming I'll always proclaim. I would rather be honest and spread the truth. I'd rather find my home above. I'd rather have Jesus than man's applause. I'd rather be faithful to his dear cause. I'd rather have Jesus than worldwide fame. I'd rather be true to his holy name than to be the king of a vast domain, or be held in sin's dread sway. I'd rather have Jesus than anything this world affords today. Each of us knows who rules this earth, and that our course is constantly turbulent. Yet we are aware of the peace that will come and the justice accomplished there. And so, in spite of the troubles, because of them too, we nurture our faith, it grows stronger. And what greater gift will soon arrive? I would rather than to be the king of a vast domain, or be held in sin's dread sway. I'd
Thank you for that beautiful music. On May 12, 2019, the sad news began to spread on this campus that Dr. Leonard Bailey had passed away. He had served as Distinguished Professor of Cardiovascular and Thoracic Surgery and of Pediatrics here at Loma Linda, and as Surgeon-in-Chief at Loma Linda University Children's Hospital. It was in 2003 that the Weniger Society saw and recognized the outstanding qualities of Dr. Bailey. Dr. Bailey now awaits his Master's celestial "Well done, thou good and faithful servant."
Please stand with me for the benediction. Dear God, we praise you as the one from whom all blessings flow. We know you are at work in the world in many ways we cannot see, but this evening we want to thank you for the things we can see, for vivid reminders of your abiding love and care, and in particular for your manifold gifts and the accomplishments and influence of those we celebrate here. They have devoted their lives to uplifting and inspiring others, to encouraging young people to learn and grow and reach their potential. They have explored the multiple facets of your love and faithfulness, bringing many to a deeper confidence in you. They have been active in guiding the church toward the fulfillment of its mission to the world, and they have shown great promise in their commitment to future service. We thank you for your gifts through them. We pray for your continuing presence in their lives and in the lives of all who have been blessed by their service. In the name of our Lord Jesus, the greatest of all your gifts, amen.
We invite you to move over now for the reception and have the opportunity to congratulate the recipients. Thank you again for your attendance.